Welcome back to Proxy, everybody, and as promised, we are going to go through the Crimson Fury list that I have devised as a counter to demons. The demon meta is incoming, guys. It is coming hard, coming fast. A lot of people are running demon princes, flying demon princes. We're seeing them all over the place. We're seeing them pop up in casual, competitive, every single state of the game. So, we need to find a way to be able to get around a bunch of flying monsters. Really tough. A lot of the new codexes that are coming out, Death Guard, Thousand Suns, they all have ways of keeping their stuff alive, either by giving them lone operative or just having them be really tough, or, being able to blanket damage like the Thousand Suns. So, what is going to be able to defeat these things? And also, there's a lot of other flying things that are appearing in the new codexes that are really good as well. Like in the Nurgle Codex or Death Guard Codex, we have the fetid bloat drones, and those things are no joke for the points. They're really tough. So just imagine something that's 90 points being toughness 9, 10 wounds, 5 up invul. It's just insane, right? And flies. So we need to kind of devise a way to kind of defeat those things without tailoring too much, right? Because obviously we don't want to do that. So this is my idea of how to maybe deal with this kind of meta. So a lot of people are playing Inari, but we know Yunari is going to get nerfed, right? Yunari is not long for this world, probably. And I don't say that in a bad way. I think it's still going to be good. It's still going to be a good detachment, just not super OP. I'll do a video on my predictions on the nerfs and stuff like that in a later video. But basically, what comes after the Yunari? Well, there's been a lot of speculation. A lot of people say Seer Council. Seer Council is my personal favorite. I love Seer Council. But Seer Council doesn't necessarily have the exact tools needed to deal with a bunch of fetid bloat drone spam or demon prince spam, right? It's a really tactical and powerful list type, but it doesn't have any kind of damage boosting abilities, right? Aside from one single stratagem that gives it ignores cover and critical AP on, wound rolls. So this is actually going to be for aspect host. Now, a lot of people are kind of probably going to question that. Aspect host was the favorite in the beginning of the edition. Now I think it's kind of like the ugly stepchild in a lot of ways. Like a lot of people still run it and they have a lot of fun with it, but there are several stratagems in the aspect host that are just never used, and they don't have a lot of versatility. It's all just all damage all the time. But we have some of the most versatile aspect warriors, versatile units in the game. So, we can do a lot more with the units themselves and use them to our advantage to, perform different roles on the battlefield. We don't necessarily need stratagems to help them do that. What Aspect Host does give us, though, is it gives us insane amounts of damage against certain targets, especially things that reduce damage, like blanket damage to 0, and things that, just are very tough to kill, right? So let's go ahead and go through the list. We're going to go through it kind of stage by stage, and I'm going to give you my thought process on it. And then we might hop onto Tabletop Simulator just to show you guys the list in its full glory and basically how we're going to play it. So we're going to start off the list with Eldrad. We need Eldrad. We need the extra CP. I've said this a million times. Eldrad is an auto-include, guys. He's an auto-include because he helps you get better secondaries when you really need to. That extra CP is really important. And he helps you just generate more damage as well in this detachment, right? You want to be able to use your damage dealing stratagems every single turn. If you're not using sustained hits, lethal hits, or ignores cover, if you're not using, preternatural precision every single turn, then you're doing something wrong, right? I mean, maybe if you table your opponent by turn 5, you won't use it, but you're usually going to be using it every turn. So we have Eldrad in the list. Also, Doom helps us big time because we have a lot of things out there that are extremely scary. Toughness 12 Nurgle Demon Princes, right? We have Toughness 7 Nurgle Terminators, toughness 6, regular Nurgle, you know, what are they called? Plague Marines, right? So Doom is going to help us a lot. Also, Mind War's pretty good, right? Those Demon Princes are characters, and actually Mind War's fairly effective against them. If they fail their invul save, they will take d6 damage from this thing. So Eldrad's a good, solid pick. Lycus is going to be in the list as well. Lycus boosts our ability to crit on 5+. So remember that stratagem, preternatural precision and aspect host. Well, this allows us to actually crit on 5. So what we can do is we can combo this with our Crimson Hunters. Now we do have, spoiler alert, it's called Crimson Fury for a reason. We have 3 of these bad boys in here. And Lycus is going to boost 1 of them per turn, give them crits 5s, which is really important as well. And also, Lycus is just awesome, right? You could use her to screen if you need to. You can charge after, shooting. Or charge after flicker jumping and shooting, of course. And she's just really badass. I love Lycus. And in Aspect Host, rerolling 1s is just icing on the cake. Okay, for other characters, we do have 2 Autarchs with Starglaives and Fusion Guns. These are to, again, mitigate our CP, generation, basically, to improve our CP. Efficiency, I should say, not generation, but efficiency. So these are going to join units of Howling Banshees. I'm just going to, yes, we have Howling Banshees in this, obviously. In Aspect Host, Howling Banshees are elite. They are absolutely criminally insane. And we're going to attach Autarchs to them so they can get free stratagems, right? So good thing to know is that if we need to deal with something in combat that has damage reduction, we don't have to spend a CP on Warrior's Bane. We could just use that, right? We could just simply use that in the fight phase. Warrior's Bane, you can use in the fight phase or the shooting phase. So being able to generate that for free is going to be important. Okay. After the Autarchs, which are there for obvious reasons. Also, by the way, guys, the Dragon Fusion Gun hits pretty hard. Like, if you don't end up using your aspect token, most of the time you will, but let's say you just roll really good and you don't need it. You can overwatch something with this thing, auto hit on a 6 with an aspect token, and it can do some significant damage to some tough targets. So there is that as well. We do have a unit of Storm Guardians. Of course, Eldrad's going to go in this just to kind of give him something to go in. They're also sticky objectives, so they provide you that, give you a little bit of objective control. A lot of these new types of armies, they're very mobile, but if you have a unit in the backfield, they're really not able to access you that well, right? Like Thousand Suns have this ability now where they can, move D6 after moving once, or if they overcharge their spell, they can move just a flat 6 inches. This is good, but they can't charge afterward, right? So having a unit that's just simply back there sitting on your objective makes it harder for them to actually kill this unit. Okay. And yes, I know that you could, flamer them to death with, those warp bane flamers or whatever they're called, but we're going to have something to counter that, and I'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so we have 2 units of Dark Reapers as well with missile launchers. I don't want to go with the I know the Tempest launchers are good, don't get me wrong. I think they're fine. I just like the missile launchers because we want to go for big D damage in this list, and we want to be able to just hit the targets that we hit and kill them outright. We don't want to leave them alive for any other turn. So 2 units of these in our backfield. Again, these guys are going to help us screen a little bit, and they're also going to be able to kind of lock down firing lanes and provide some chip damage to things that are out in the open. And also, they're great against things like rhinos and stuff. I mean, rhinos are not very tough. They're just kind of your basic transports. They're around 80 points, and they're in the perfect range for Dark Reapers to take out if needed. So if we need to take out a rhino with, all these Plague Marines inside, then we can do that. 2 units of Howling Banshees, like I said before, going to go with the Autarchs. Great for heroic intervention, great for screening. And what I mean by screening is they're going to be able to prevent your opponent from moving into certain areas because of that heroic intervention. So it's not screening in the traditional sense. It's a screening is, well, it's kind of like screening as your opponent will charge you and then you will delete them. So your opponent is not going to do that, right? And again, the great thing about having an Autarch with these guys is if you go second, all right, now a lot of people have been asking me about this. Proxy Hammer, how do you deploy if you go second against things like Blood Angels or, really fast moving armies that can charge you turn one? My key is Howling Banshees, right? I always keep a unit of Howling Banshees either with Jane or with an Autarch or sometimes both near key targets. And I will screen one side of the battlefield and move block one side of the battlefield with Striking Scorpions, and the other side of the battlefield I'll have Howling Banshees on, and my opponent's not going to be able to do anything against it, right? If my opponent charges, 5 Death Company and Lamartis into a unit of Howling Banshees with Jane Czar or a unit of Howling Banshees with, Autarch, it's pretty much going to be a wash, right? And actually, I think Howling Banshees come out on top in Aspect Host because you get the reroll ones. So you reroll ones to hit. You can also use a CP. If you have an Autarch, you can use 2 CP on this unit, and you can do Warrior's Bane. So if your opponent has some sort of damage mitigation ability, then they're not going to be able to really, benefit from that. So this is a really powerful combo, and it just absolutely shreds Blood Angels. Any kind of fast-moving combat units are going to be just destroyed. So that's how I account for the other side of the battlefield, right? I know my opponent's not going to be fast enough to shoot me, but are they fast enough to charge me? Well, if they are, I have some Howling Banshees who can easily deal with that. Okay, 2 units of Striking Scorpions for our screening needs, and also if you get first turn, with this type of list, screening is good. You're not going to be able to screen against every opponent, though, and that's the thing, right? Like, I just recently made a screening video and a move blocking video. There are going to be some opponents they're not going to be able to successfully move block. And I've talked about this in previous videos, and I've gone over this, when Blood Angels were really powerful, I talked about this, right? That you cannot move block flying infantry. Okay, if you can't move block flying infantry, then you need to predict where they will go and then make sure that your Scorpions are in front of them. So if Blood Angels move 12 inches, then you just need to make sure that those Scorpions are 12 inches, they infiltrate up 12 inches away from those Blood Angels, or, 13 inches away, so that just in case they advance, they're still not going to be able to be placed there. And so what ends up happening 9 times out of 10, unless they roll like a 6 on their advance or something, and even sometimes then they're not able to fully do it, is they're going to be not able to move past your Scorpions because 13, 14 inches is going to land them within engagement range. And that's not going to be good because they can't do that. So they're going to have to move before your Scorpions and charge your Scorpions, which will leave them out in the open. I've had games where I've put a squad of Scorpions, and by the way, I play against Blood Angels all the time. One of my buddies plays Blood Angels, and I had this game where I put some Striking Scorpions literally right across from 5 Blood Angels with Lamartis, and I put them about 13 inches. I went second. He rolled an advance roll. He was like a 3. He measured it out, and he was like, I can't get past you. And he just didn't do anything. He just chose to move 0 inches. Guys, those Scorpions survived despite being out in the open. Like, literally, they did get shot at a little bit, but they survived is the point, right? So even though they were completely out in the open, because they were positioned correctly, right? You have to know what you're going up against, right? There's not a one answer fits all thing to Warhammer 40K. Sometimes you got to improvise a little bit. Anyway, we'll go into that in a future video. We have 2 units of Swooping Hawks. Now, this might seem like a weird choice, but it's actually kind of needed in this type of list. So first of all, Swooping Hawks are good for just, doing mortal wound damage. We know that 2 units of Swooping Hawks coming in can do approximately 5 mortal wounds to an enemy unit, which is okay. But really what we're using these for is we're using them for screening purposes. So this list is really going to be about move blocking your opponent as much as possible, or putting them in a position where they have to react to you, right? Like putting Swooping Hawks on an objective and saying, hey, you're going to have to come out and deal with these, or we're going to score primary points. And your opponent can't hide at that point. Now, this is key, because if your opponent can't hide from you because of your Crimson Hunters, and then you're putting things on objectives, so your opponent really has to go out there, your opponent's going to completely forget about the Crimson Hunters, right? And that's what we want them to do. We want them to not maybe forget that they're there, but basically forget about the certain angles that the Crimson Hunters can get on our opponent. And Swooping Hawks can help us do that. Swooping Hawks are also great for screening your Crimson Hunters. So if your opponent has flying demon princes, those are the only things that can assault your Crimson Hunters in combat. So we can just use Swooping Hawks, their large bases, to basically surround the Crimson Hunter's base so that it can't be charged. That's another thing we can do. We can also do that with Warp Spiders. So we have a small Warlock Conclave. I told you guys earlier about the counter to, deep striking and stuff, and that's basically the Warlock Conclave. We're just going to put that with the Storm Guardians. It makes it a little bit tougher, gives it -1 to wound, and gives it a couple of, just ablative wounds, and the Overwatch isn't bad, right? You're getting basically 2 Strength 7 AP -1, D6 +2 Flamer attacks against anything that comes down, which is not going to help you against certain things, but it will do significant damage against lighter targets. If you're playing against IG and they decide to bring down a whole unit of Tempestus Scions, well, that's not good for them because they're going to get overwatched and burnt to a crisp. If they decide to bring down some regular, Scions, or if you're playing against another army with some sort of deep strike, they're just not going to be able to survive that typically. And actually, I've even found that recently, Inceptors, deep striking down next to a unit with Warlocks in it, doesn't fare that well because you have Strength 7 now, and they have Toughness 6. So they're going to be, and it's -1 AP. So they're also going to be, kind of suffering some big time damage if they come in. So they're not going to be able to fully do what they want. So yeah, 2 Warlocks, 55 points. We could have also added a unit of Rangers in here. I don't know what exactly is more effective. I have to really play with this list a little bit more. But I don't think I'll need the extra screening because of all the extra move blocking because of all the Swooping Hawks, Striking Scorpions, Warp Spiders I have. So I decided to go with the Warlock Conclave instead. And then to round out the list, before our Crimson Hunter madness here, is we have 3 units of Warp Spiders. One goes with Lycos with the Power Blade Array, and then we have 2 normal units. And again, just being able to, at any time in the game, move 26 inches, possibly, or 24 inches with no Overwatch, and just nuke something or move block something so that they can't actually get to where they want to go, is critical. Is absolutely critical. And sadly, I don't have 3 full units of Warp Spiders. I have to proxy Warp Spiders a lot of times for other things, but they're great. They're absolutely phenomenal. Warp Spiders are great. So I usually, in my competitive lists, eventually I'll get to the point where I own a full 3 squads of them, but, it's one of those things where I'm like, they have new models, they have great new models, but I need to own more than 1 unit. So yeah, because they're awesome. Also, probably a target for small points nerfs in the coming weeks. We'll see. All right. So lastly, we have our 3 Crimson Hunters. Our 3 Crimson Hunters are going to be kind of the glue that holds this list together. It's basically what the list revolves around. So as you guys have seen with the rest of the list is very move blocky, but it also has a lot of damage. Now, this was on purpose, right? Because we have the Aspect Host rerolls, but we also want to be able to move block our opponents. And we also want to be able to get into positions on the battlefield where we can expose our opponent's units. So our opponent is going to have to move on to objectives. And once they're on those objectives, the Crimson Hunters come into play. So turn 2, turn 3, these bad boys are going to come out and they're going to start blasting, right? So we have 3 of them with Bright Lances. So they each come with 2 Bright Lances and a Pulse Laser. Now, a lot of you guys will think, well, that can't do anything. That can't do anything. That's just basically a Wraith Lord with an extra Pulse Laser. Or that's just like a little bit more than a Falcon. Well, that would be true, except you're an Aspect Host. So that means that these guys are re-rolling hit rolls of 1 or wound rolls of 1, your choice. Usually I go with the hit rolls of 1 just because if you get like 3 1s on the hit roll, nothing is going to help you on the wound roll, right? You're going to just not do enough damage. Whereas you can target this unit with preternatural precision to give it sustained hits 6+, which can be further boosted with Lycus, right? So your Crimson Hunters can come in, 3 of them can come in and reliably kill 2 Demon Princes with assistance. Remember, I made a video about this and a couple people were like, oh, they don't kill a Demon Prince on average. Well, yes, normally Crimson Hunters will not kill a Demon Prince on average outside of Aspect Host. But once you start factoring in Aspect Host, you start to factor in the stratagems, right? You have an ignores damage stratagem, which means they can't blank damage, right? Couple of detachments in like the, what are they called? Emperor's Children, sorry, blanked me for a second. Emperor's Children, Slanesh, have an enhancement that allows them to blank a damage once per turn, right? Or change a dice to a 6. Well, that's going to throw off a normal Crimson Hunter, but it's not going to throw off one that has sustained hits, right? So if you throw sustained hits on it, Lycus taps that target, you're getting sustained on 5+. Chances are you're going to get at least 2 of those sustained hits on something, maybe more if you're lucky. And then rolling to wound, you're going to be wounding on 2+ with the Bright Lances, and you're going to be rolling on 3+ with the Pulse Lasers, which is insanely good. Because remember, if the opponent flies, you're getting +1 to hit, +1 to wound. So it's like, yeah, they can change a dice to a 6, but they're taking like 4 or maybe even 5 in some cases armor saves or invul saves against the target. The other thing is the damage negation. So the second Crimson Hunter you can target with Warrior's Bane. And then all of a sudden that -1 damage that the Emperor's Children, for some reason Emperor's Children get -1 damage. I don't know why, but it doesn't make lore sense to me. I think Nurgle should have that, but whatever. All of a sudden, they're just taking more wounds than they should because of Warrior's Bane. They're not getting that -1 damage. And then the third Crimson Hunter can just clean up whatever targets manage to survive. So if your opponent has, one of his dudes on like 6 wounds and is like, yeah, he survived, hell yeah, the third Crimson Hunter just wipes him out, right? And we also have other units in our army that can deal with things that are on like 2 or 3 wounds left, right? We have Swooping Hawks. I told you guys earlier about their mortal wound damage. They can come in, do 2 or 3 mortal wounds a pop, and especially if they advance and just shoot, I mean, they can bring down a Demon Prince at like 3 wounds. Right? Because basically what they do, they come in, they blast them with the, mortal wounds. They do, let's say 2 mortal wounds. They don't roll that great. Your Demon Prince friend is at one wound left. And then you just blast them with a bunch of lethal hits, right? And then the Exarch's Last Blaster, you could even just make sure it, actually wounds with an aspect token. So that's at -1 armor. So chances are you're going to kill it. Basically is the point there. All right. So that's the list. And basically the goal is to get your opponent to, again, react to your moves. You have a lot of MSU aspect warriors. They're going to have to move stuff out. They're going to have to move things into position, or else they're just going to lose the board advantage, right? And if your opponent ever loses the board advantage before turn 2, where they're just absolutely move blocked and screened out everywhere, they're not going to be able to do much against you, and you're going to score more on primary. Like, even against Death Guard, right? If you have units on everything and your opponent is so scared to come out and shoot you because of the Crimson Hunters, you've already won the game. So a good opponent will just say, I'll just have to take the losses with the Crimson Hunters, and whatever the Crimson Hunters do, hopefully I can prevent them from killing everything. But the cool thing is that they're not going to be able to, because 3 Crimson Hunters and Aspect Hosts can reliably kill 2 Flying Demon Princes of pretty much any faction, right? And I'm dead serious. I've rolled this so many times. I mean, there's only been a couple times where I've rolled like Yahtzee 1s, and I've been like, oh, okay, well, if I roll Yahtzee 1s, there's not much I can do anyway, right? That's just Warhammer for you. Regardless of, I mean, dice do play some role if you roll really bad, right? But even so, let's say you roll Yahtzee 1s, there's a way that, 2 Crimson Hunters can easily pick up another Demon Prince, And then they only have 1 or 2 left, and then maybe you move block those, right? Although, truthfully, I think that'd be pretty dire if you didn't kill at least 2 of them with all of your forces. But anyway, so yeah, Crimson Hunters really good in this detachment. I'm kind of sold on them. I do want to practice using these a lot more. And oh, and by the way, in case you guys don't know, when Crimson Hunters come in the battlefield, they're flyers, so they ignore obscuring terrain. So that's really why they're good. They're not, if they didn't ignore that, if they weren't aircraft, I wouldn't consider them. I would just be running fire dragons with wave serpents, hoping for the best. But again, Crimson Hunters, there's 480 for 3. You can have 2 units of fire dragons and a wave serpent for that, around that cost, right? 2 units of fire dragons, 220, wave serpent 125. Well, you could have probably 3 units of, yeah, so you could have 3 units of fire dragons and a wave serpent for the same cost. But fire dragons and a wave serpent do not ignore line of sight. They cannot outrange Overwatch, so they will always be under threat of Overwatch. I know that we have a aspect token to ignore Overwatch, but that's only on 1 unit. Maybe 2 if you decide to charge with something. That's not exactly a great, that's not exactly great odds of being able to kill a bunch of stuff in 1 turn. And I think that's what a lot of players are having trouble with is Emperor's Children, Nurgle, Death Guard, now Thousand Sons. They all have really powerful Overwatch. Every single army has something that can Overwatch very effectively. So fire dragons coming in, if you have 1 fire dragon per turn coming in, your opponent can effectively screen that out, right? That's the other thing. Fire dragons are really short ranged. Even if they don't screen it out and they lose 1 demon prince, chances are they've positioned themselves now to where they can effectively deal with the other 2 units. And that's if you're spamming fire dragons, right? A lot of people are just taking 2 units. So I think the Crimson Hunter strategy is good in theory. I've played it once against my Ultramarines buddy. It did fine. It killed a Lancer, Gladiator Lancer in the backfield. That was awesome. It's awesome being able to ignore ignore smoke, basically. Ignore the -1 to hit and just slap it anyway. It's great to ignore the Armor of Contempt with Warrior's Bane as well, right? So when you could ignore those 2 stratagems and then you could just, basically what I did is I came in, I used Preacher Natural Precision, Warrior's Bane. Lycus was already in the area. She was move blocking something else that turn. So I just used her to shoot the Lancer. I got 5+ sustained hits. I rolled 2 sustained hits. I didn't miss a single time. I didn't roll a single 2+. Well, did I miss? Yeah, you know what? I think I did roll a 1, but I re-rolled it into a hit because of, aspect host. And so I was sitting on 7 dice wounding. And yeah, I don't get the +1 to wound, but I'm wounding on 3s with the Bright Lances, and I'm wounding on 5s with the Pulse Lasers, and I got enough of them in there to where he failed a couple saves, I rolled my dice, and I killed it. And yeah, that's kind of a lucky roll, but I also had 2 other Crimson Hunters waiting in the wings that could have caught it and killed it. So, it's one of those things where whatever your opponent has that is going to be their dedicated anti-large, like some Chaos players, and we've seen this in tournament lists and stuff, they bring a Predator Annihilator, right, for their backfield anti-large. Well, shoot, 3 Crimson Hunters can take that thing out, right? If they don't have many flying things, like let's say you're going against a Thousand Sons player and they bring in Chaos Predator or Emperor's Children, Chaos Predator in the backfield, and you're worried about that thing hitting one of your Crimson Hunters out of the sky, right off the bat, then you could target that thing and kill it with basically the same amount of ease as, a Demon Prince, just because you ignore line of sight and because you have all the stratagems that are able to boost your damage. And remember, we have Eldrad in this list, so you could even save up for a command reroll if you want to, right? Like if you want to use a command reroll, you can, because we have Eldrad. right? So we have a bunch of free CP hanging around the list. And that's not even the whole list. We also have Dark Reapers. Remember that. So if your opponent's out in the open, your Dark Reapers can handle it. So anyway. Okay, anyway, that's the idea for the list. Let's go ahead and jump into Tabletop Simulator. I'm just going to show you guys basically, kind of how you should think about using the Crimson Hunters and kind of some of the angles you can get on your opponent. And then we will end the video. And we're probably going to do a video later on about maybe we'll do a video about going second, what to do when you go second. A lot of people are confused on that. So we'll kind of do a video on that. And hopefully we'll also be able to do a video on Warwalkers soon, because I do want to cover them as well. All right, guys. Be right back in just a second on Tabletop Simulator. Alrighty, so welcome to the Tabletop Simulator example, where we're going to kind of show you how this army kind of moves around the battlefield. Alright, so we're assuming this is the time when our Crimson Hunters would come in. One of our Striking Scorpion units is completely dead. The other unit would have been safe because we would have deployed it back here, and then it would have kind of crawled up, with a scout move, and with a normal move could have moved right here to block off these Plague Marines. Now, they're probably dead by now, but I just left them there for posterity's sake. So it's our turn now, and we're set up pretty nicely, right? We have our Warp Spiders back here. We have our Howling Banshees protecting these units from charges. Another unit of Dark Reapers back here. We have Eldrad and his Storm Guardian screen in the backfield. We have our Howling Banshees over here, ready to, kind of assault whatever's needed, charge into whatever's needed, and now our Crimson Hunters can come into play. So our Crimson Hunters have a couple of angles here. Now, our opponent did his best, or her best, to hide these bloat drones. Now, the Demon Princes of Nurgle are not flying, so unfortunately they're going to be untargetable because of Lone Op. But our job is to go after these bloat drones, right? That's really what we want to do. So we have a couple of options. There's a bloat drone sitting right there, but the ones we really want to go after are the ones with the heavy blight launchers. So one or two things are going to happen. Our opponent's going to be so afraid of the Crimson Hunters that they're going to deploy all their bloat drones with heavy launchers back here, hiding into this big ruin. That's one thing our opponent can do. The other thing is our opponent's going to try to squeeze them into these corners here to try to mitigate as much line of sight as possible. However, that's not going to work. And the reason being is because we have line of sight in this corner. So we can just come in here, right? It's kind of why we have the Howling Banshees and the Hawks over here to take care of. Anything that was over here is now gone, right? Oh, and by the way, this is, let me show you the deployment zone real quick, right? This is, of course, going to be table quarters, right? Search and destroy, I think it's called. So what that means is that we were deploying over here. Within 2 turns, we've moved our guys out, which is very easy for Eldar. If you guys are wondering how we're getting all our Warp Spiders up here, they move 24 inches. They can easily move here in 1 turn. Swooping Hawks, we're going to move over here, try to threaten this objective. Again, we're just trying to threaten all these objectives, so our opponent has to do something about it, right? I think on turn 1 or by turn 2, the Swooping Hawks could possibly even get to this objective up here, to be honest. So they could even try to hold that. Our opponent's not able to get to the center unless they move out. And again, if they move out, we got Dark Reapers, we got Crimson Hunters coming in. It's going to be a very bad time for our opponent. So we have line of sight right down this lane right here. Again, we ignore obscuring terrain. So look at that. We can see the 2 bloat drones right there. They cannot hide from us. Okay, if we didn't want to come over there and we wanted to come over here, which we're fully able to do because it's not in our opponent's deployment zone. Again, we look from this angle right here. This is a little bit of a more vulnerable position, but look at that. We got the bloat drone behind here. And if we look, let's see, if we kind of go over here a little bit. Right, if we're able to come in on this side, see, we move blocked these guys from being able to come in. So if we can bring in a Crimson Hunter right here, then we can also see their stuff, their bloat drones over here. So realistically, the only real place that they can hide is back here. So if our opponent wants to do that, then just let them. Just let them, right? Just let them put all their stuff right here and then just control the rest of the battlefield. That's fine. Your Crimson Hunters can come in on turn 3 if that's the case. By turn 3, they're going to need to move something or they're going to lose. And then our Crimson Hunters have already won us the game. If it's turn 2 and they move like this, then we can come in over here. I actually really like this position on this map because it gives us essentially the whole map. And by the way, whatever deployment you guys are on, I haven't shown all the deployments on all the different types of, maps and stuff like that. I realize that. Because I can't make, 30 videos in 2 weeks. That's impossible. But I really like this deployment in particular because it has line of sight right here. And a lot of the maps have these line of sight lanes for these Crimson Hunters, right? So you can come in right here. And the other good thing about this is you just have to draw a line of sight with the wing. So you can actually bring 3 of these bad boys in here. Like you can bring 1, 2, let's make sure they're correct here. And you could bring another one right here, or maybe, yeah. I know the wings are like overlapping, but as long as the bases don't overlap, you're fine. All right. So you can actually, with all 3 of these bad boys, you can see those guys over there, right? And then maybe with this one right here, you shoot at this blow drone, right? You don't need to actually be able to target all of them. You could just put this guy right here and say, oh, I'm going to just shoot this one, blow it out of the sky. These 2 can go after these ones. Now, if your opponent has flying demon princes, in this case, they're Nurgle demon princes, so they're on foot. But if they are flying demon princes, we have line of sight on those too. Look, right? There's a flying demon prince right here. There we go. Line of sight. Line of sight, right? We can see those models and we can back them up even a little bit, right? So that we can see. Now, the other advantage to this is if your opponent did put all their, very valuable, like, right, these fetid bloat drones with the, let's see which ones they are. Yeah, with the heavy blight launchers, these are the only things that are able to kill the Crimson Hunters at range, right? And they do a decent job of killing them. I think they do about 6 wounds on average dice to a Crimson Hunter. So 2 of these things will take out a Crimson Hunter, no problem. But check this out. If your opponent has all these behind here, right, on turn 3, and basically this means that 300 of their points are just doing nothing. But you can gang up on one of these demon princes right here. You can destroy it because, or you could just go after these normal fetid bloat drones, which will give you more battlefield control. It basically means they can't overwatch as effectively because these things are really good in Overwatch. They have 2d6, strength 6, AP -1, damage 1, anti-infantry 2+, ignores cover torrent weapons are just absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy at Overwatch. So, if we moved these guys up here, these warp spiders, we would have to make sure that they were out of line of sight. Like if this one wanted to Overwatch, we'd have to say immune to Overwatch to make sure that they couldn't shoot. Of course, we're safe here because it doesn't have line of sight, right? Because it's hiding like a little bitch. But yeah, they're back here. They're not doing anything, right? If they do want to move out, right, they're 10 inches. They have to move around this. Right, they have to move around this thing. And then they can get to about here. This one maybe gets to like right here. Right, if they want to go after our Crimson Hunters next turn. And guess what? These are 36-inch range. They're only in range of 1. So all 3 of them will probably kill 1 of these. But that's it, right? And we could even, I mean, if that was the case, we could even make sure that they're not in range, right? We could just move these slightly over. Move these slightly over, move this back. If we really wanted to be a dick about it, we could make sure that they would not have range. I mean, if you're just playing casually, you just have 1 Crimson Hunter sticking out there. Like 3 of these things killing 1 is not that big of a deal because these 2 are going to come in and wipe up 2 of them, and then that's it. You've already killed a bunch of stuff with these Crimson Hunters. So they're right here now. Do we have 36-inch range still? Let's check. Not quite. Right, we're just out. And actually, I could have moved this about an inch back as well. Right. So yeah, basically we can come in and our opponent can't even retaliate, right? Like the only weapons that can realistically retaliate against this board are 48-inch weapons, which they don't have. So unless they have a Predator Annihilator back there, which remember we talked about that, we could just kill it, then they're not going to be able to do much. And if they're hiding everything back behind this ruin, right? If they're hiding a bunch of points behind here, again, you have full control over the rest of the battlefield. Nurgle is a hard army to beat, but they're not a hard army to control, which means that they're very slow, they're tough, but they're slow. So if you can prevent them from going where they want to go, then you'll have a much easier time with your Eldar. All right, I hope that kind of showed you a little bit about the Crimson Hunter. Again, these have tons of angles, and just all you have to do, guys, if you're wanting to practice with a Crimson Hunter, even if you just have one, I mean, even one is like kind of a good asset to have against these new armies, because one can at least take out something, right? One can come in, take out one thing that your opponent was hiding, and then your fire dragons or whatever can take out something else, right? You can come in over here. This is a great angle for seeing anything behind this obscuring terrain, right? Coming in over here again can get you line of sight to anything behind here. It's just crazy the angles you can get with Crimson Hunters. It's really insane. You know, I would say it's kind of like, you know, the Dark Eldar have the Void Raven Bomber for infantry. And the Void Raven Bomber, the reason why you have one is because it allows you to kill infantry that are behind walls, that are hiding behind obscuring terrain. Well, the same principle applies to the Crimson Hunter. You're using this thing to kill flying vehicles or flying monsters behind terrain pieces that you normally wouldn't be able to shoot at. And yeah, it's a lot of points. 3 Crimson Hunters is a lot, but I think it changes the narrative enough of the game to where your opponent has to think in a completely different way. And at least from where I'm going, or where I'm thinking, your opponent's going to have to, like I said earlier, either hide their units and make them useless for 3 turns of the game. And, you know, any units that are not doing jack shit for 3 turns of the game, I mean, that's big, right? The rest of your army can kind of control the battlefield. And once the Crimson Hunters do come in, and they will come in, they're going to wipe up whatever they hit, right? They're going to do damage. Okay, guys, that's going to be it for the, you know, kind of example here. I know it wasn't much, but I just really wanted to show you what the Crimson Hunters could get line of sight on an average, you know, kind of board. So, yeah, anyway, that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to all my patrons and supporters who have helped support the channel over the last 2+ years. We're almost at 3 years, guys. Pretty crazy. We'll be in 3 years this coming October, so just after the summer, which is insane. So thank you so much for all the support. If you do want to join the channel's Patreon and help support the channel, that'd be awesome. If you want to join up for free with a Patreon free trial and just join the Discord, that's awesome too. I will leave the link in the description for that. And also, check out my channel store page. I have a bunch of Eldar-inspired apparel on there. If you want to rep the greatest faction in 40K at your local game store, you know, be a proud Eldari, then check out my channel store page. I have a bunch of Aspect Rune stuff, you know, a bunch of Eldar-inspired, you know, kind of apparel there. Check it out. And, you know, of course, it does help the channel a little bit if you buy something there. I think there's a discount going on for like 25% off right now, so check that out. You can get a pretty affordable shirt for, you know, not much, and then also help the channel. And then lastly, I do have an Amazon affiliate link. A lot of the Aspect Warriors are gone, but you can always check it out. Maybe they're available in your region. And, you know, you will get discounts on Amazon, of course, compared to buying directly from GW. So, yeah. All right, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one, everybody. Peace out.